One of the best movies from one of the masters. It's Ingmar Bergman's Autumn Sonata. What is this movie about? Is it any good? Let's talk about those things coming up next. Autumn Sonata is a 1978 movie by Ingmar Bergman. It stars Ingrid Bergman and Liv Ullmann, who would appear in a lot of Bergman movies, obviously. To me, this is a little tiny bit of a career revival. Bergman had gone off to Hollywood, made the movie The Serpent's Egg, which I don't think is that great, a Hollywood-style movie. Before that, he had made a musical, which I find delightful, The Magic Flute. But this movie, Autumn Sonata, comes back to many of his bread and butter scenarios and questions, including two females, female-female relationship, and two people in close quarters, and they're going to hash it out and have psychological drama and tension. They resemble each other, therefore. Another question coming up in this movie is art and how art affects us, how art enables communication. And the mother character, played by Ingrid Bergman in this, is a professional artist, a piano player, who, during the childhood of the daughter she deals with, the Liv Ullmann character, basically forsook her daughters for the sake of her professional life. The movie brings up questions then about women, basically. Should they stay home? Should they be mothers in a household, as the Liv Ullmann character is, and she actually is a caretaker for her sister, who is disabled, having some jealousy and being very upset at the mother, who has kind of abandoned this disabled sister. Or should women go out into the professional world? Now, it's not an either or necessarily, but this movie shows that in this particular relationship with these two characters, there is a kind of either or. Another thing coming up in this movie for the daughter, the Liv Ullmann character, is she is not as talented as her mother, who is a gifted pianist. But yet we see her play piano in this movie. She's not bad at all. She plays a Chopin sonata very well. Her mother hears it, is moved by it. There's a wonderful scene in which you can see the mother being moved by the playing of her daughter, who's just not as good, not a professional. And then she comes in and then corrects her and plays her own version of it.
Du tyckte tydligen inte om mitt sätt att spela just det här preludiet. Men var och en måste ju ha sin uppfattning. Ja, visst, just det. Jag vill veta din.
That scene shows us the disparity between the mother and the daughter quite severely, and yet that scene also opens up the communication which will follow in the last two-thirds of the movie, in which they really hash it out and bring up all kinds of past details that have bothered them. And they have in a way, a therapy session, but also a sort of a devastating open session in which, the mother should feel guilty, and, the daughter lays it on her pretty heavily. And meanwhile, the mother, shows the daughter all that she went through in her past. On the outskirts is the daughter's husband, a pastor, and here they're at a parsonage, and he actually hears some of the secrets about his wife that he didn't know. So it's a very interesting movie as far as the man on the outside looking in, as Bergman kind of is as a director, creating these female characters, and we know that a man is shaping these women in a way, and I think that's what's going on at the beginning. For example, the pastor becomes a framing narrator, literally even framing his wife. And then at the end, we see him at the end too. The movie takes place in autumn. Rarely did Bergman use this season of the year. Normally, spring and summer, especially earlier in his career. Winter comes up in Winter Light and The Passion of Anna in the late 1960s. Here he chooses autumn and the typical colors of autumn. To me, autumn is a perfect season because, of course, it's a harvest, where here the daughter and the mother are reaping the harvest that they have sown, quote-unquote, throughout their lives. The daughter being jealous and upset at the mother throughout her life since childhood. The mother returning here after 7 years not seeing her daughter, actually also her disabled daughter, perhaps feeling quite guilty, having a number of relationships with men, I think 4 different marriages. So the harvest is coming, but it's not a harvest they're going to enjoy at all. Also, autumn is transitioning into winter. Winter time is the last season of the year. It's also a long, dark, dreary, and cold season, perhaps reflecting the end stage of life. Here the mother is in her own autumn, as it were, getting close to the end of her life, sort of, at least the end of her working life as a professional artist. And so to me, this movie has one of the greatest color schemes I can recall, just all the autumny colors with the brown tones, the whitish, the off-whitish tones, and then the reds that come in, especially with the Ingrid Bergman characters' outfits. And then the theme of sonatas, of course, Chopin's sonata, Mozart comes into the movie, and this classical music. Bergman's always wanted to ask the question, what good is art? Film, for example, what's the point of film, or what does it do for ordinary people? The same question occurs with music, with operas and the magic flute, and in this case, it's to get us to open up. In fact, it is a chief means, maybe the chief means of human expression, better, I think, in the case of this movie, than ordinary language. I don't think the mother and daughter could communicate very well together until, at least in this movie, they play the Chopin sonata for each other in their own styles. That is a way to get them to sort of talk to each other, but to express themselves through Chopin, who, as a creator, allows a breadth and range of emotions to be played in his tunes, allows these characters to then express themselves and tell each other about each other, as it were. I think Bergman knew that's what art is for, good art, whether it's high or low art, doesn't matter. And in fact, that's what film is for, to express all the psychological dilemmas, the trauma, the interior spaces that we have that are hard to communicate to other people, especially in ordinary language, which tends to mask things because we like our world of appearances or vanity. Bergman wants to get over that and through that. In so many of his movies, as a student of the human face, to me, in Winter Light, in Persona, for example, definitely in this movie, he nails, or he expresses the human face so well, with the Ingrid Bergman character and the Liv Ullmann character both doing absolutely magical work here. Liv Ullmann is always good in these Bergman movies, so for that reason, I think this movie is entirely great. I have a suggestion as well. I think this is a movie to start with if you're a person, or if you know people who haven't seen Bergman and they're asking, well, what Bergman movie should I start with? I wouldn't necessarily take them to The Seventh Seal first. Maybe not even Persona first, or that might be able to work. This movie really gets all of Bergman and encapsulates him. Two characters in tight spaces, the question of art, the question of psychological interiors and how to express them, women and the roles of women in society, what should they be, the trauma of women after birth, abortion, and a number of female health issues come up here throughout the entire movie. The question of women in families and how do women deal with other family members, whether here their mothers and sisters and husbands. And that comes up throughout in all of Bergman's corpus. So this movie has some similarities to the familiar Bergman movies we know, such as Persona, for example. And to me, this movie is literature with a capital L. It expresses rich, complex characters meeting each other in a particular moment in their lives, showing their particular troubles, and then expressing that both are unique, interesting humans who are like us but are themselves. And I think the important humanism undergirding Bergman, I don't mean atheism, but when I say humanism, I mean he really believes that all humans are dignified, deserving of study, of worth, of love, of charity for sure. And he gives charity, I think, to one of the best directors ever, giving charity to females in particular, a male recognizing how deep and rich and open and interesting females are. And with so many male directors ever, males dominating up until the present day, being directors and movie makers, producers, and whatnot, Bergman really paid, I think, pretty strong attention to female concerns throughout his career. And I think he does it here at least pretty well, and acknowledging that this is a male looking at females, as he does here in the opening, as he does at the beginning of Persona. But also recognizing, I love women, I want to understand them, I love the women in my life, I've probably wronged them in some way, how can I know them better or love them better? I think at least his art expresses the want or desire to love the women he knew better. And you sort of see these autobiographical elements very briefly, Bergman expressing himself this way in a movie like Autumn Sonata. What do you think about this movie? I've praised it. I think it's one of Bergman's best, and I think you should try to watch it if you haven't. If you've seen it, what do you think about it? How do you interpret it? What are your questions about it? Let us know in the comments. Please subscribe to this channel for more great content. Thank you. Have a great day.